CPG LinkedIn Live. And we're going to be talking today about how do small brands start using data. In the past, it was really only big brands that could afford data, that knew how to use data. And it's been really nice through the partnership that we have with NielsenIQ and some of the new products that they've been introducing. Small brands now have access to it, and it makes a huge difference. It really has for us at Machu Picchu. We use the data all the time in every presentation. We use it to make decisions, and we use it to tell our story. So I'm really grateful to have Andrew on with us, who
What's up, guys?
Is going to tell us a little bit about what they've been up to at introducing yourself a little bit and telling us about what you guys do at NielsenIQ.
Cool. Thanks, Daniel, for having me. So Andrew Criezis, I lead our U.S. NielsenIQ business, focused on our small and medium business, so all emerging brands, all startups, all the way to some pretty decent-sized brands. But my mission and the mission that we're on, as a company, is to democratize data and analytics. So for those who have run into at Expo East, last week or before, hopefully you've heard a little bit about that. But so what we've done is really try to change the game to really enable you guys to be successful, and to do it in a way that, like Daniel was saying, right, like it gives brands access to things that were never accessible before. And how we've teed that up is just with a new platform we built from the ground up. Instead of taking platforms or technologies that are built for Fortune 500 companies, right, that require like data analysts and data scientists to mine data and have teams around it. Like, you're a startup, you don't have that, right? But you should have the output of that, right? Like, you should be able to have access to what that can do for you or what decisions you can make. So long story short, we built this platform called Visor, and launched it about a year ago. And the whole premise there is to give access to the CPG world with, retail measurement, POS data, panel, as well as the insights and analytics behind it, so that you can just jump in and make decisions on where you need to go, tell your investor pitch better, pitch to retail. So it's been a fun whirlwind, the last year or two building that platform out, but then really helping shape, I think, the industry and just opening that up from a couple thousand, brands in the US that actually have access to any data from any vendor to hopefully, tens of thousands of brands that have access and can compete and, help innovate on a new level.
And just to be clear, my job before Machu Picchu was that guy, like the person who pulls the data, who spends their whole day just pulling it and figuring out how to use it. And it's very powerful, and you can do incredible deep dive analytics, but also a lot of it you don't really need to spend that much time in. So I'm glad I'm out of that job, because probably this makes it redundant, because it's so much easier now.
I was on a call earlier with a client who's like, I think you just made my job redundant. I was like, no. I was like, we just made you, like, imagine if you had 4 Machu Picchu drinks, right? Or four Red Bulls. Like, that's how much more impact you can have, right? So you're not staring at spreadsheets all day, right? Like, you're able to actually be out in the field and sell and pitch and deal with the supply chain issues. So for sure.
And we just got a comment from Jimmy in the chat asking if it was free or available. So so a really cool thing is, so through a partnership with NielsenIQ and Visor, you actually can get a couple free reports. And we'll talk about that in just a second. And then maybe the next time while Andrew's talking, I'll paste the link here in the chat so you can get access to it. But through our special link, the Startup CPG link, you can get 3 free reports. Patrick just posted it. Thank you, Patrick. So you can click there and get 3 free reports, which I actually just used pretty recently for Machu Picchu. And I mean, if I just think about how much brands used to have to pay for even just a little sliver of data just to get your bearings, could cost, $10K, $20K. I don't even remember how much, but just to get a really basic understanding. So maybe I thought maybe I could actually just talk a little bit about what I've been doing with the data. Just since we're talking,
that would be great. Let's do it.
Reports. And just for anybody who doesn't know, so Machu Picchu Energy, we make craft organic energy drinks. And these are
The best crafter.
Yes,
You got to preface it.
You should do the intro.
Right.
I've been doing it a lot just from Expo East and the Unify show.
Yeah.
But yeah, really overwhelmingly positive responsiveness to the drink so far. But energy drinks are growing like crazy, which I know from the data. And what we tried to do is just bring a better alternative to what's out there. So although it's growing like crazy, the quality of liquids has been pretty low, very artificial. Taste, honestly, not that great, but we've been putting up with it. And so we made a craft version of that. So the same approach that people had used to take to the beer industry, to just bringing a familiar taste profile, but using better ingredients, making it with more care. That's what we've done, and we're a socially conscious business that also does good helping kids. So we have partnerships in Latin America, and then also here in the U.S. we teach in public schools in underserved communities. We teach kids to create their own beverage companies. So I don't know if they're probably not going to be ready for these reports yet, but someday they will be, and they'll get free reports too. So what I can say is, at the onset, I was really fortunate to get hired by the founder of this company from almost day zero, basically, where he had a lot of the idea, the concept, and what he wanted to do. And then we were immediately able to start looking at some of the data to validate the concept, understand the size of the market, that kind of stuff. And so I'll tell you what I did, and you can tell me what other stuff you might have.
All right, I'll give some coaching along the way.
Okay, cool. So the first thing that I was really interested to look at was just overall category dynamics. And so his feeling was that the category was doing really well. Energy was growing really fast. And so what I started looking at is, what's the size and growth of the energy category specifically? And, what I saw then, what I see now is that it's just on like a breakaway tear. So even, 27% growth year over year, depending on, if you're looking at, grocery stores versus, the mass chain included, which is, Walmart and Target. So that's like unheard of, just unprecedented growth. It's one of the fastest growing things in the whole store, which is what I hear when I talk to the buyers as well. So that's a good market to be in. But then I also want to understand, where is that growth coming from? So which brands are driving it? And especially in the early days, I actually was really surprised to see it was the incumbents, like the big companies that you guys all know. They were driving the lion's share of that. And that was pretty interesting, because then for me, I understood, okay, at this point, actually, it's more of a category thing. People are looking way more for energy drinks these days. They're, coming from coffee, or, we're all home during the pandemic and stressed out, we're working more. We're just looking for more energy, and those guys are available. That's what people are drinking. And, now when I do that, I actually see it shifting a little bit towards some of the more, I'd say health oriented brands. And, but that's what we saw initially. Yeah. And then the other thing I was looking at really carefully, number one, like pricing right at the front. Just need to understand how, is it possible even in this category? Are they low price points and they're high? And that's one of the benefits of the energy category, is that there is a lot of consumer value there if you compare it to like a sparkling water, which really helps out a new brand. So that was really important for us to see. And then the last thing was just regions, especially important for us. And I think for any emerging brand, is just, where am I going to try to win, right? And just understanding the different sizes of the market. So I was immediately able to see it pretty interesting. Los Angeles is the biggest market for energy drinks in the country. And, even putting stuff up against per capita consumption, and just seeing wow, LA is huge. California is an amazing market for this, and especially the healthier drinks that are coming online now. Texas, great market. And it makes sense now that I'm further along and I've done, demos in Texas and seen people just come up.
You've got the proof points and the data now to show it.
Yeah. Now I know why they buy like 10 or 20 cans at once when I demo. Great thing. So what do you think? Any those are that was the first thing that I did. Any initial,
which I would say is commend you, right? Because I think it is being curious to have some of that data to help guide your strategy. I'd say that's the most fundamental thing. And I'll just share one quick stat with you, Daniel. So when we look at it, we did a survey around, kind of emerging brands actually globally, just to see what are the trends over the last, year or so. And what we found is a few things. One, now more than ever, there are more consumers of emerging brands that are interested in variety. So it's 54% of consumers are now purchasing more variety than they ever have before, pre-pandemic. meaning like they're more likely to try, these new brands or new products on shelves. And then the other stat with it is that emerging brands are contributing 50% of all the growth in the US CPG in the first quarter of this year, which is like unbelievable because you think about it, like a community of smaller brands, the dollar, actual sales that we contribute as a segment is not the lion's share, right? It's the big brands, but it's the small brands that are driving the most growth. Oh, what's up, dog? So I just want to share that landscape. But from like, how do you think about approaching it? I think you started right, which is, I was watching the pitch slams last week at Expo East. Investors and retailers are really looking at, do you know your addressable market? So like, do you know your TAM, your total addressable market? And not just like, oh, the category of, beverages is a, $50 billion business annually in the US. Like that's way too broad, right? And so it is getting more specific to like, what is your definition of, energy? Are you looking at, organic? Is it no sugar? Like, what are those segments for your different SKUs? And therefore, what's your like addressable market that you're, really trying to play in? And that's giving like that investor or retailer a view into where can you go with this? Like if I'm bought into your story and your product and your offering, I want to know how much of a runway this is going to have. And so that's indicative on that piece. And the second thing would be around the shopper element. So as you start on that, just how big is the marketplace? Then, like you said, narrow into what are some of the key regions of growth. So like one of the things you can do within Advisor is fundamentally we've changed the game, and you'll see this if you go start playing the system, is it's an open retail model. So you have access to all of our retailers, that we have cooperation with, which is a huge number that allow us to do this. So it's 400 plus retailers, 1,000 plus channels or markets. So it's kind of like you got to have access just like you're a top, brand in the country. But from there, you can start to drill into, all right, well, how is energy doing, like you said, on the West Coast or specifically LA, and really hone in. And that's going to help give you your story, because then you can say, well, this is what's happening. This is the trend. This is the growth. These are then my consumer. And so the other thing to throw in there would be like layering in what we call our household panel data or shopper information. So again, on the pitch slam, a lot of brands are presenting of like, oh, our shopper is, older or younger of this demographic, but there's no actual like hard numbers behind it. And the reality is, my wife used to work for a startup, a sparkling beverage company, alcoholic company. Like, they didn't really have data, right? You just had to, you kind of know who's buying it, but you don't really know for sure. You don't know where at the store and how much they're spending. So I think it's building credibility with that data when you're presenting to your retailers or presenting to investors on, all right, go run a panel report, which, in the past maybe cost like $40,000 from, a company like Nielsen, like totally inaccessible. But the fact that it's now included, for free within Advisor allows you to look at, okay, do I have enough loyalty? If you have enough sales, you could track it. But even if you don't, you're just launching a brand, is, well, what's the loyalty of like my competitors I'm trying to play in the same space of, right? Or what's the leakage if I'm trying to sell my product into, Whole Foods or, a Publix? Like, where are consumers going for energy, and then, where are they falling off to? And if you come with that knowledge, one, you're gonna have way more credibility. Like when you talk to a retailer, because they're like, oh, you know your business, like where you're trying to go, your consumer, the addressable market. Like, okay, let's have a conversation in more detail about, can we grow you? What would that take? So that's what I'm kind of saying. I think you've done some really good steps, and it's like that double click even further on that panel side unlocks then like your trajectory of where you can go, because you can really understand your shopper or competitor or category shoppers, right? And how it's changing. It's like a constant, that consumer is shifting for sure.
Yeah, that's definitely where I want to get to. And I see some questions coming in from Jimmy Tay that, yes, NielsenIQ does have convenience store data. It's a specific channel you can run. It's awesome, really helpful, especially for energy, which is very big in convenience store. We look at that stuff. So that was another thing that I looked at really early on, was just what are the channel dynamics? Where is stuff sold? How do the price points differ? And then, the next thing that I had looked at also was past that kind of initial category and brand and, region view was down more to the SKU level. So the actual, what are these products like? What are the different attributes that are making a difference here? What are the top selling flavors? The different health claims that are around, like full sugar versus no sugar, all of that kind of stuff. And then starting to understand, especially velocities, which if anyone doesn't know what that means, that's
we go.
That's the magic word in our industry, velocity, which is how many cans are you going to sell in one store in a week. But I mean, just super helpful because I always see people who just honestly have no idea, like how many cans, if you ask a stranger on the street, how many cans do you think we sell in a store in a week? They'll be like, I don't know, 100. Like, I wish someday, maybe like, most categories, if you can just start over one, you're in a good place, which is hard for, I think, people to wrap their heads around. But it really priceless to just at least understand from the start, like, okay, similar brands starting out, where did they start out? Into my forecast also, and just understand how much I should produce. When I get into that chain, I don't need to freak out because it's a great chain, but maybe they don't do a lot of velocity. So, I'm okay with my inventory.
That all sits on a good point. Like I was chatting with the founder of Joy Milk Tea. And so we had a great, discussion, and he was kind of sharing how like that area of milk teas like doesn't have a traditional category, right? Like it's kind of intersecting of the tea category with traditional like coffee and coffee and milk category. And so what he did, to your point, is like he looked at adjacent characteristics of the coffee category, and then you looked at packaging, looked at the size of it, looked at the velocities as well to see like how many dollars per distribution and how much you pushing through the stores to be indicative of like what can we do within this brand, right? And so I think that's another way to look at it, is use those more refined attributes about your product, whether it's like organic, natural, a flavor set, package, ingredients, is it gluten-free, is it sustainable? Are you mentioning that on the package? All of that, there's data on that we code within our data and attribute it. So you can look across those like key trends, diets, across the board. And then that helps you tell your story more definitively of, okay, are there other players or not? If there are players, that's actually really helpful because you can understand the dynamic in those shops. You can better tell your story of what you want to do, whether it's, in retail or online. So yeah, I think that you've got the right approach there of like that double click down, looking into those attributes. And then that's where you unlock what's unique about like your product.
Yeah. And even you mentioned the organic one. I mean, stuff like that is super important to understand and just start talking to buyers, because if you talk to a buyer for a while, you meet a bunch of them and start to understand what they do every day. Yeah. I mean, most of the buyers that I talk to are not just an energy buyer. They're a buyer maybe for beverage, or if it's one of these cool natural chains we want to be in, they might have like 10 categories. I don't know how many, but the point is they're probably not looking at the energy category data the way that I am, and they're not
every day, right? They're not living and breathing it every day.
but they'll listen because just the same way that lobbyists on the Hill, they get listened to because they bring real data and things that are helpful. Obviously, they're all pushing their own narrative, but I mean, it's kind of your responsibility to do the same thing, because who really does do that are the big brands, and they have not just you getting access, fortunately, to this platform, but they have a whole team of people doing it and just trying to bury your story. So you better at least take a swing at it with what's available, especially for free. So for anyone who's just joining us, I'm here with Andrew, and we're talking about the Visor tool that's available from NielsenIQ. Honestly, revolutionary for data being accessible to small brands. Through the Startup CPG link, which someone posted here just now from Yvonne, thank you. You get 3 free reports, which you can get a cool brand report, and also check out basically top 10s all over the board. Like, what are the top 10 regions, what are the top 10 brands, that kind of stuff, which is, I mean, just incredibly helpful info to have. And then understand a lot more category dynamics. And then, after you use those 3 free reports, you can set up a weekly alert and get that. And I mean, that's really helpful. And then they have now kind of ad hoc, like piecemeal reports you can buy, which was never true before. It used to be you couldn't sneeze when it came to data for less than 50K or something, but now you have it.
It's changed the game with, I mean, it's these subscriptions that we've created. I saw the question from Paul, so thanks for commenting in. 100%. The goal of building Visor was for startups and emerging brands. So there are absolutely packages and subscriptions that get into like the hundreds of dollars a month, right? Super reasonable to, thousands a month, depending on what you're trying to do. And the whole idea is to provide you guys with an entry point that can let you compete and then to help you grow, right? And then the strategy, right? Like we want to grow with you over time and help provide more services. But yeah, absolutely affordable. Check out some of the packages. Again, we don't want there to be a barrier anymore to access to quality data, weekly live data, the same thing that a top brand would see.
Yes. And I'm telling you, people like buyers listen when I drop the data points. I always keep these data points like high up in my deck because if you're talking about category growth, they are thinking, okay, if especially at smaller stores, like how much space am I going to keep for the energy set? Should I now start making more space? Like where is that volume coming from? And, especially if you can couple those data points with some of your own research. Like I just did my own survey and then I tie that into the data. I'm like, hey, here's growth in the category. And then I surveyed our consumers and I can tell you that actually half of our volume is coming from people who are instead, making coffee at home or like, whatever they're doing to show them that actually it is incremental. It's coming from other places. Give us more space in the set. And of course, give me all of those new facings that you're going to.
Right. Yeah, no, that's so true. Cause like a lot of what is key to do, especially I'll give an example. I was actually just chatting earlier today, like 2 hours ago with a buyer of Whole Foods, Jen, awesome person, just meeting her. And so they've got a whole structure, which is internally they have category analysts, right? Who are providing research and recommendations based on the NielsenIQ data, because we have a really good partnership with them. And then they're recommending that to the buyer. And so it's like one team is doing that analysis and then the buyer is getting that research. What I was just talking to her about is, when are you most impressed with a brand, or least impressed when they're coming in for like a category review or trying to get you on board? And, one of the clear differences is like, one, do you have what we talked about before? Do we know like the segment, right? Do we have the addressable market? The two is just showing up and making that job easier for the buyer. If you show up with your story database, she's less reliant, or that individual, that buyer is less reliant on, has my team done all the research and analytics to prove that this is a good or not, right, action to take with this brand. And if you come with that really compelling database story, like their world is in data because they're making, decisions there, as well as the qualitative, like here's the shopper story, like here's the consumer base, this is why it's changing. It's going to resonate a lot more than if you just show up with like, these are our sales. This is, we're going after $100 million category and we're really cool because this is our brand story. Like that isn't enough to step you above, another competitor to get you on shelf.
And, one thing that I've learned about data and the decks is if you don't have data, then they'll wonder what the data is and there are holes in the story that you're telling them.
Right.
Even if you don't have the perfect data, just having it in there
exactly
with your story, then it sort of fits the story that is forming in a buyer's mind about you and your brand and how the product's going to perform. And if usually what you'll see is them nodding along the presentation as you're showing the data, that means it makes sense to them and they understand what you're telling them. If it's not in there, then it's going on inside their head and they're wondering what's actually happening in the category. So
if they're blank in the face and they're like, maybe we should have a class on the facial expressions of how to read a buyer. That's a future one.
I do it all the time. I love paying attention to that and just how many times people touch their face. Anytime, if they ever touch their face when they're saying something like, maybe you could do an ad spend with us. There's probably some room in there then.
Right. Yep. See, there we go. A couple tips. I like it.
So one thing I was going to ask about is you mentioned, when you're talking to Whole Foods, they have all these category analysts looking at the data. So, probably though, then when you're talking to small retailers, they don't have those kind of resources.
Exactly.
So especially this stuff, even if you don't have a ton, can be really advantageous because, there are some retailers, they're just going to wait till they see you in the data. When they see you popping up in the data, they're going to come to you, right?
Right. Yep. Yeah. When they start to see the trends, but that's, you want to be approaching that before. And I think especially other retailers where, aren't going to have the same level of resourcing as a large major national player. Like the easier you can make that story for them and give them the data, it does two things. One, it makes them look really smart, right? Like if they have that story and they can go justify why they're going to bring you on shelf and why they're going to take that, risk or commitment to you providing product, and selling through their shop, they can take that story and sell it back internally. So you've almost done part of the work for the buyer, and that is fundamentally like a huge step forward, right? If not, then they have to justify without the data, and they need to go dig the data and really understand your brand, and they're probably going to get it wrong because they don't know the unique attributes about your product in detail or unique aspects of your consumer to justify it. So yeah, for sure, whether it's a smaller retailer or a large retailer, it's going to be a big advantage. And I have an example. We did a partnership with minority-owned businesses, so small startups. I think you remember that one a little while back. And there was one company I was working with, and she was launching into CVS, and it's her, and I think it was her and her husband, right, two-person operation, and then they have a partner who's doing the packaging and stuff like that, and they were trying to get into CVS to go, get a, I think it was a region of CVS, not national. And so practiced with her, we had her come into Bizer, give her a bunch of the insights data. She went and presented it. Total novice data. I had never played with any insights on measurement of retailers, understanding category trends, looking at the attributes, helped her with her pitch deck, went to the CVS buyer, and they were like, holy, like, the reaction, actually, I have the email, and I shared it internally as a company, and we were like so happy about it, was like, I have never had someone come at us at this level of size of a company with this much insight and knowledge about why they deserve to be on shelf. And so then she got into CVS, like, the next reset. And she was, over the moon. So there is definitely merit and like real world examples of this happening when you get it right.
Dude, you gotta help me get into CVS. There we go.
There we go. Yeah. We've got the magic sauce.
That's amazing. And so, I mean, most of this stuff in Bizer is really like it's self-serve, right? So you click on the link that I know Yvonne posted where you get 3 free reports, and you go and just, set kind of your parameters there. And
your category. Starts to select your selections. What category do you want to focus on? With the free subscription, you'll get access to one free category. And then if you want to, buy a subscription, you can have any number of categories, right? It all comes down to kind of what your focus is. And then, like you're saying, super intuitive. You can go run in reports that are ready to go dashboards. You can subscribe to alerts that are giving you like insight on pricing, changes in assortment. You can run stories. Think of that as, we try to do all the hard work for you and build algorithms that basically build your category review deck. So like if you need to get ready for a pitch to a retailer, you can click a couple buttons and it will generate your whole PowerPoint presentation on the data side. And then you're really just layering in your brand story and the mission and all that. So yeah, for sure, intuitive. We wanted the easy button, and you'll see that there.
That's amazing. So, and I'll also mention to people, we actually do sometimes kind of more deep dive category reviews. If anybody is looking for, at Startup CPG, we have an analyst who just uses the Nielsen data and tries to drop it into what we call data drops. So she'll do a whole category review, talk about the highest and lowest performers. So you guys can join our Slack channel to see that. The link is on startupcpg.com. You can click right into the Slack, and we do that there. We email it out as well. Just super interesting data insights from her, and that's kind of all she's up to. And we really think NielsenIQ for making all that data available for you guys, because it really is unprecedented that everybody actually gets to pull back the curtain and see all of this great data. I personally appreciate it as somebody who has just been really deep in the weeds on all of this data, and having to learn how to use different kinds of platforms that, some people, even if they had access to the database, the big database, wouldn't know how to use it. So now we make it nice and easy with the Bizer tool. And I'll tell you the thing that I did with, I think, Nielsen data, that when I was deep in the details, that I was most proud of, just because I think you'll appreciate the hustle here.
All right, I want to hear this.
What I wanted to do was fight for additional facings at one retailer. And so it wasn't just enough to show our performance, because our point was, we're doing well and we only have one facing. And these other guys, they're doing better than us, but it's because they have like 10 facings. So it's another facing. And so it was like me going out and not just counting the facings, because the products are different sizes, right? But actually with a tape measure going and actually
I
measure
love it. Yep.
linear inches of every single product on the shelf at the retailer, and then going into the data, pulling all the data by SKU, matching those two things up so I could then not just have the sales by SKU by store, but then per linear inch, and then basically use that to show the productivity of sales by linear inch and say, look, 3 times more productive, you're going to sell more. Just give us another facing. And then they did, and it was a major retailer. So, and then our sales went up, I think 10 to 15%, like right away because of the facing.
And then it was money dropping. That was awesome.
Yeah. And I threw away my tape measure because it was so much work. I wanted to do it.
That is amazing, though. I love that. No, it's so true, though, right? Because that is part of your story is, like, as a small brand, right? You're coming on shelf. You're going to get a face. If you get on shelf facing, maybe 1 or 2, right? But it is one, having access to that data in more real time. Love the measurement approach too, like getting super technical with it. But then it's also like looking at when you do that facing, like what's your velocity of that facing, right? It goes back to the point earlier. And when you're able to compare, I was actually talking to a brand on the show floor last week who was about to speak to, I think, their Whole Foods buyer. And he was like, we're trying to tell our story. I don't know when they're coming over, but I'm a little bit nervous. And I was like, well, let me help you out. And I ran over, got my laptop, came over with Pfizer. I was like, well, let's just look up your velocities. Like, let's go through. Let's see your brand rank within this retailer, because they were worried about like being delisted or something, like that. And I was able to pull up that they actually have pretty strong velocities. They don't have a lot of distribution, but their velocity was stronger than than another player who all of a sudden was getting a lot more distribution and facings. And so that's part of a healthy dialogue, right? Like if there are more consumers wanting your product and driving more velocity out of that little facing that you have, like the consumer at the end of the day should win, right? Like the consumer desire, needs, et cetera, attributes that are important to them, that should be the driver. And sometimes you need that data to unlock like truly what's behind it.
Amazing. Well, Andrew, anything else that you feel like people need to know, all the brands out there, about Pfizer or how to make the most of it?
Yeah. I mean, I would just share, like, as I went around the Expo East last week, just because it's so relevant, I think the number one thing is just awareness, understanding that you all have access to something that did not exist, a year ago, and it's just getting out in the world as far as knowledge about it with Pfizer, and that is going to be a game changer for you. And so it's really that awareness of this is a totally approachable asset that can really take you to the next level. And it's not something that's going to break your bank, right? That's not the intention here. And it is us being on a mission to help lift you guys up and to grow the overall space. So yeah, I would just say the last call is, take advantage of it. There's a free subscription. You cannot go wrong by getting free data, but there's so much more to do once you start to engage with it. That's just going to help you on your journey.
All right. And then anything that you think everybody should know about how good the Pfizer team is at karaoke?
I knew you were going to ask that.
We just know, for anyone who doesn't know, so NielsenIQ and Pfizer, they sponsored our party at Expo East, which
epic party.
One of the best parties of all time. And you guys basically just camped out in the karaoke room.
Yeah, there may have been a round of shots and then some girl on fire from one of our analytics leaders. It was a rock star at singing Girl on Fire. Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, hey, Andrew, thank you so much. I know we'll hopefully be chatting a bunch more, just because I think we just are kind of scratching the surface, and hopefully convincing everybody to start looking at the data. And then I think later on we'll be able to go much more into some of the use cases and hopefully bring all of you guys along for the journey. So John was just asking for the link for more info on the subscription. So I think, I can show.
Yvonne, right on it. Thank you, Yvonne.
I can show Yvonne's response here. So Yvonne
that's so cool.
Yeah, she had actually posted the link here. So hopefully you guys can see what she had posted here, but we'll make sure we paste it again at the end. Yvonne just posted it again. So thank you, Yvonne. We appreciate that. I can show it. That's so cool. I love the software. Cool. So I hope you guys check it out, and then, get on our Startup CPG Slack. If you ever have questions, you can always, kind of post them there, and we'll make sure we tag the right people on there so you can get some help there. But we want to make this easy. It's very scary and daunting data, I know, but we're all in it together. So let's take the plunge.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Daniel.
All right. Bye, everyone.